Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to another episode. This one is Venison Bourguignon. Is it truly Bourguignon? There were mistakes made. Yes, I know, Josh, but we're going to go through it. This is going to be for you, your recipe, and how to make it. These are the basic staples: venison, potato, carrot, celery, onion, garlic, thyme, bay leaf, and of course you should use a wine from Burgundy. When I went to do this, I went into the refrigerator and grabbed what I had. I thought I had some pearl onions, didn't have it, so I had to use some regular white onions. And I also realized I didn't have bacon. So does that make it a bourguignon or doesn't it? Well, I think it does. Alright, so instead of bacon, I used some extra whole butter, trying to provide the umami flavor, but you just can't replace that smoky flavor. Still turned out delicious. What you want to make sure you do is you want to get a good brown sear on the meat. Doesn't have to cook through because that's going to happen at the second half of this recipe. But you need to build flavor, and that starts at the very beginning from the butter. Josh, you want to do this in 2 batches. You don't want to overcrowd the pan, otherwise you won't get a nice brown sear. You're just going to stew the meat in its own liquid. Once you brown it, you put it aside. You want to sear and caramelize your vegetables, which would be the onion, celery, and carrots. Get that a little translucent. Now, the other mistake I made, Joshua, and I think I should have done that, I should have either used more mirepoix, the onion, celery, and carrot, and mushrooms, or I should have just reserved half of it at the back half of this recipe, because what happened in the end, I followed the traditional temperature and length of time in the braising part of this recipe. I braised it at 300 degrees and I did it for 2.5 hours. What actually happened was the vegetables broke down into the stew. Most of them did. And I didn't have enough at the end. So I think I would have reserved half of it. And for the venison, even 2 hours, people, if you decide to use the game meat, it's a little bit drier. And I think I would actually braise this whole thing for easily 3.5 hours to get it fall apart tender. It was tender at the end, but just not tender enough. When you do a one-pot stew, when you mix in the flour, you want to make sure you incorporate it and soak up all the flour before you put the wine inside of there to deglaze it, and actually creates the roux. And remember, throughout each step, you're creating flavor. So you want the wine to reduce a little bit. You want to mix it in with the tomato paste. Now you can go ahead and use whole tomatoes, but the tomato paste works well for a stew. It gives you a little bit more body, and it helps with the acidic flavor of the stew as well, a little bit more pronounced than a fresh tomato. But if you only have fresh tomatoes on hand, this is what I did with, you have to make choices, and you just go ahead and use it. Use what you got. So now I put the lid on it as I'm just making sure my roux develops inside of this before I add the rest of my liquid. I'm steaming it so that it traps the condensation in there so it doesn't dry out in the pan. I don't want to reduce it too far yet. Now, using a homemade beef stock that you made yourself is by far one of the better choices. And if you look up top, I made a link to my beef stock video. You can see the basics of how to do that as well, and that'll walk you through. It's a pretty good tutorial. I actually had extra beef stock from that video, and what you can do if you don't use it all, I froze my stock. It's a good step. You won't lose it, and it won't go bad. Make sure any of the flavor and the liquid that comes out of the meat, definitely don't be scared to add that back. That's all flavor. There's about a heavy teaspoon of thyme and 2 bay leaves. Backtracking a little bit, the garlic, I think I put in 5 cloves of garlic. You can definitely go more if that's your preference. As far as I'm concerned, there can never be too much garlic. So now, just like Bronco, put it in the oven, set it and forget it. You can see the temperature is 300. And then every once in a while, just pull it out, check, see how it is. Now, I left the lid off that. You can see it had the skin, and that happens more so when you use fresh homemade stock. And then it'll just incorporate right back. You notice as I'm mixing it, you don't see any of that skin. It just melts right back into the flavor of the stew. You can see the meat's pretty stiff. It hasn't broken down quite yet. But my quality control sample, it still was delicious. That's pretty much it for beef bourguignon. Yes, this still could be considered a bourguignon. Reason being the wine, the steps, the ingredients. Just because you omit something like the bacon, it definitely does change the flavor profile, but it is still bourguignon. I just want to say thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed watching how this stew is made. It was definitely delicious. It was good. My only qualm, I think I would have left it in for 3+ hours instead of 2+ hours, just to make it more tender. And I think I would have added my vegetables more so at the end so they were pronounced instead of broken down. All right, everybody, just want to say thanks again, and I'll see you on the next one. Oh, and Joshua, don't forget, if you want to cook something, you need to know where the kitchen is. See you later.